Welcome to another episode of the Super Bold podcast. My guest today is Chelsea Myers. She does M&A, as we call it in the business. She helps entrepreneurs to have an exit for their business and capitalize on the value that they've built. And she's has some very unique techniques that we're going to dive into about that. But we're also going to find out how somebody got into this and the bold moves along the way that created this very successful business she has. So, Chelsea, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Fred, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So, explain what you do basically for an entrepreneur. Let's say I've built 1-800 dentist up to $45 million a year, and I'm ready to sell. So, and this has already happened. So, this is I'm not asking you to do it. This is I'm creating in the listener's mind an example of and now what would you say to me at that point?
Yeah, well, I'm going to want to understand a bit about your goals, how you want to exit, and what your plans are post exit. And we want to make sure that we're setting you up to really get those outcomes that you've been working for. And so we're going to look at your valuation and make sure that it's where you want it to be, where it can be, make sure that we have the right people in the right spots, and make sure that we have all the supports in place so that as that transition takes place, it's not only a smooth and profitable exit for you, but the company is able to continue doing what it's doing really, really well.
Yeah, and I would be very concerned. I'm going to keep talking like it hasn't happened yet about my team members being able to continue in their careers. I've built a really terrific culture and a really terrific, hardworking team of very talented people who are not ready to be done. So, how do I take care of them?
Yeah, that's a really layered question, I think. So one of the things that I do exceptionally well is I know people, and so we want to get to know where everybody's at. When there are major changes, chaos, stress, transitions, people are all over the board and whether or not they can handle that and how they're going to handle that. And so we have to be very intentional about the delivery of information, the supports we put in place, um, and then ensure that just because they've been the right person up till this point, now we're talking about a transition. Now we're talking about a major change. Are they still the right person? Or do other things need to either be changed or put in place to support that transition appropriately? So, it can be complex.
Yes, understandably. So one of the things you had said initially is making sure you've got the right people in place for the next chapter of this business. So you'll look at people's in certain positions and say, yeah, she was a great CFO to get you this far, but she's more really like a controller than a CFO. And this business
Right.
really needs a stronger CFO. So would you go through the business and the team before you took it to market? Is that like one of the earlier steps before you even start going out there and trying to find a buyer?
Yeah, so ideally, we want to make sure that we have you in the best position to get the best offer for your company. And so we want to make sure all of those pieces are in place. And you just said it excellently. Not that somebody isn't qualified and doesn't have all of the right answers and even the right experience and personality type, but do they have the acumen to support a transition without um, you in place anymore, or whoever they've been looking to up till this point as their leader? When we remove that element, how do they perform, or what can we expect from that situation? And it's the answers are varied, but we want to make sure that it's still the right situation for you so that we can make sure, you like, to your point, we've developed these people, we care a lot about their careers and their futures, and including the CFO, who may and may not be the right spot anymore. So we need to just identify what is actually healthiest, because ultimately, by being loyal to the structure of the company, we are best taking care of her, even if that means a change in title.
Interesting. So I'm going to dive back into this in a bit, but I want to know how'd you get started on this, Chelsea? You're only
I don't know,
17,
Fred.
for God's sakes.
Oh, that I'm always curious how I should answer that question too. So I have always known that I have a unique ability to hear what's being said and also what's not being said and see around corners in a really unique way, almost magical way. And that has been really impactful in my life. And there have been times in my life where people don't want to be found out or it's not been as appreciated by some. But leaning into that, I've been able to create relationships and solve problems and collaborate in ways that weren't necessarily you know, on the outline for the job description I was holding at that time. And it just led me down some really interesting paths. Usually the journey of an entrepreneur, it's not a straight path. It's just a really exciting one. So we can talk about all those curves if you want to. But that's kind of the short answer is just really recognizing what are my passions? What are my strengths? Where am I, where's this beautiful combination of what I do really, really well, and it seems to be supporting other people's goals and growth as well.
So I wanted to hear some of the twists and turns. So what was your first job out of college? Would be where to
Yeah,
start.
for first job out of college was at Wells Fargo Bank. And what was really unique about that position was if we go back a few years, go back to high school, when I was 16, I came home from school one day and learned that I unexpectedly lost my dad. He was in a fatal car accident. And that actually was the first domino of about six family deaths that took place in a 6 year, or I'm sorry, in a 12-year period. And so what's unique about that is you've got I was a child and you lose one of your parents. There's not really a handbook for that. And then over that 12-year period, losing over half of my adult support system. There was grandma, grandpa, my aunt, people that I had grown up around and really looked to be my emotional support. And so the people that were left, who are now, my age or around the age that I am now. So I have a lot of compassion for what they were going through. We're dealing with the aftermath of all of this loss, and one loss would be a lot, but when you're talking about two and then three and then four and then five, there's a lot going on in that family in a short period of time. And that alone was a lot. And I found myself asking myself really deep questions at a young age. How do I want to think about death? How do I want this to impact me? What do I want to make this mean? Do I want to handle it like the adults that are showing me how they are handling chaos and stress and confusion and aftermath of death or not? And it led me to make some intentional choices. In that same time period, I also was already dabbling with drugs and alcohol and just took a nosedive all the way in. And that's, as you can imagine, not sustainable. So, um, here's the one thing I will say, and I love saying this publicly, it ruffles a little bit of feathers, but I am grateful for the drugs and alcohol for that brief time period that they supplied me with a solution because I actually had no idea how to handle some of these things. And so for a moment, they allowed a little bit of disconnect from head and heart where I could just not feel. But like I say, it quickly becomes, goes from a solution to a really big problem. And luckily, I was able to find my way out of that. And so when we fast forward to Wells Fargo Bank, I've now found my way out of that. And I was put on a project where we were implementing some technology. It was a big system overhaul. And I was actually still in college at that point, but you have this young girl that comes in and is telling these people who've been doing their job for about as long as she's been alive, we're going to change everything. And it includes tech. And you probably have never even been exposed to these things before. And they were scared. They were oppositional. They had no interest in hearing what I wanted them to do and why. And it was a little intimidating. But Fred, because I had worked through so many things and got to know myself on such a personal level, I was able to look in their eyes and instead of seeing people who just didn't like me, which is I think how I would have looked at that situation, I saw people who were afraid about being displaced. I saw people who had, spent their careers doing really, really well, and now things were changing in a very uncomfortable way. And that raised concerns for them. And so I was able to see that and connect with them. And over the course of a year, it was a very successful project rollout, but it included a lot of caring for the human component of that unit. And that to me was eye-opening. I was like, "Okay, I'm not sure about this banking thing." I then got my, graduated with my business finance degree. Maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe it's not, but I really, really love working with the humans. So that was my entry point.
Yeah, and you went in the rapid maturing mode with those level of crises in sequence in your life. Yeah, and certainly you're when you're overwhelmed at a certain point in your life, it's pretty easy to turn to substance and make the pain go away for a little while till you can catch up with it. So you managed to get sober and make that part of I guess your core existence, and you got it done early. That's the one upside maybe to it. But those things strengthen you, as they say, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And uh, but sometimes we get pretty close to having killed something having killed us. But so then you started evolving into the next phase, because banking's kind of stodgy and slow moving, and you were definitely uh, moving their cheese, and uh, and uh, and so, but uh, were there moments in your life, in this period, where you you maybe hesitated and missed something that you should have picked up on? Or were you just at this point where you were just, I'm ready to work without a net. I'm ready to just keep dancing on the high wire.
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember the very first time I heard the term entrepreneur. I was about 9 years old and I spent a lot of time, my family's really close, and I was having dinner with my uncle. We were sitting outside and he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I don't remember what I said, but then I returned to the question and he mentioned the term entrepreneur. And I didn't even know what it meant, but I knew that it electrified my veins. And so then in high school there was an entrepreneurship class, so I took that. But my parents worked really, really hard for everything we had, but they always wished that they had more to provide to us. And so growing up, I was always encouraged, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be something that from our vantage point, looks like it has a reliable, comfortable financial result for you. And so I landed on business finance. It was as close as I could get. Math came easy to me, and I just couldn't commit to one of those other boxes. It just didn't feel quite right to me. And so, you know, when I was at Wells Fargo Bank, if I had to think about what did I miss or what could I have paid attention to more, what I can see now looking back is that no matter what position I was in, I was not looking for the syllabus or wanting to check all the boxes. I was looking at it like, how can I do not just like the job, but a really fantastic job and even better? And what could be done to improve this whole situation? I mean, that's how we think, right? We usually don't make very good long term employees. Um,
No, because
and
you're
so,
scaring the crap out of people all day long,
right,
who are
right. So
looking for
that's something,
stability and security and a boat that doesn't rock. Uh, and
right.
you're in there rocking it.
Yes, yes. So that I can definitely see that now looking back. Back then, I probably just thought, I mean, I can tell you from a little girl, that entrepreneurial brain, I'm just not fitting in all the way here. And you notice that, but you kind of get used to it by that point. So,
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mostly there were times in my life where I was an entrepreneur. I was totally unfamiliar with the concept, even when I was an entrepreneur, because once I was in college and out of it for a while, because I took a 4 year break in the middle of college.
Mhm.
I had a painting business, so I had to find the houses to paint, and I had people working for me. Even then, I didn't think, oh, I'm running a business. It's so interesting. And then I fell in love with the advertising world. That was my moment where I said, oh, I could do this. This would be fun and interesting, and I would enjoy making the money because I was not a good employee. I was not a
Mhm.
particularly hardworking employee. I was a fast learner, but that didn't necessarily. I didn't have other great work skills because I got bored too easily.
Hmm.
And then eventually I eventually started my own business. Then I became a real entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
now I coach entrepreneurs to try to get them started earlier than I did. And also, as an entrepreneur, you realize most people aren't this way. And
Right.
you have to, you know, stop trying to encourage them to be this way if they don't want to be, because
Hmm.
entrepreneurs need employees. The
Right.
ratio is, I don't need 200 entrepreneurs working for me. I need people who want to be salespeople, who want to be, accountants, who want to do the marketing position, who want to be in management position, but they want a paycheck. They want
Hmm.
me to absorb the risk and not tell them when things are at risk. They'd rather not even know that we had trouble making payroll this month or something like that. So all right, so now you're at Wells Fargo, rattling everyone's cage, and so what's next?
So kind of in tandem, two things happened. One, a manager that we shared the floor with came up to me and he was like, "Chelsea, I got to know what you did with that team. Quite honestly, we all expected you to fail. Obviously, that you did really, really well. What'd you do? I need to be able to manage change that way." So I talked to him about, just the human aspect and connecting with the team and how to simultaneously roll out something technical that also cared for the people on the team and kept them a cohesive, collaborative network of people. And that was really inspiring to him. And he said, you've got to meet this dentist friend of mine. He's talking about hiring a consultant. And I really think this is what he's talking about. And about that same time, I decided to take on a project supporting the North Texas region of public schools and building out a program for their autistic and emotionally disturbed population. And so at that time, this was like early 2000s. So coaching in dentistry was a lot of like in person or email type coaching. And so I worked with this dentist. He got the professional and personal transformation he was looking for. And I got introduced to this industry. And I was like, I think that my talents can be of use here. And this is really exciting to me. And meanwhile, I'm building out this program, which is different, but similar in the sense that I'm building something and rolling it out to people who are going to actually be executing on a daily basis. I even had my own classroom so I could do some mentorship and support and demonstrate how this program can be implemented. And it was really cool. It was a really cool thing. And so that project in the public school system took about 8 years. And during that time, I was building a network of dental um, entrepreneurs. And at the end of that, I decided, I think we went out to Europe. I got to present my research and results. It was cool. I came back to the States and then was going to implement a small piece of it up in Oklahoma. They weren't prepared to implement it at the scale that Texas was, but so supported them in one aspect of that project here. But meanwhile was like, I think I want to own dental practices. And so I reached out to an attorney who everybody knows now, Brian Kaleo. But back then, Dykema was, Brian and I were joking about it, at the first Dykema conference. I was either at the first or second, but we were kind of shoulder to shoulder. It was like one room. It was before Dykema was this 2,500 person event. And anyway, and he was like, yeah, so here's how that works. And so I partnered in some practices for a while, and that was really cool because I got to see how uh, the leadership development and the personal development and the things that I was already doing individually with dentists and other entrepreneurs was executed, and maybe what more was needed in that environment. It was a really neat vantage point. Um, but that's a different animal. So I had to make a choice after a couple of years. Do you keep growing dental practices or do you grow the leadership development and support entrepreneurs? I mean, what I'm an entrepreneur, but I got to make a choice here. Um, I ended up selling off the ownership interest in those practices and building Dental Life Coach, which I'm the face of that business still. And then I have another dental company that is a little more silent. And then I have my primary passion, which is supporting entrepreneurs and exit entrepreneurs.
So you uh, we're riding two logs down the same river with those, and yeah, it's but that's the entrepreneur's disease. I was like, I can do that too. I
Yeah.
think I could do
Yeah.
both of those things, even though they're completely unrelated and both require full time attention. Uh, so, but the the city project is kind of fascinating because where did that come from? Like, how did that evolve? Because it's such a very specific thing to help out on, and to be drawn
Yeah.
into, and so what brought you to that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that on a podcast, but actually, one of my clients in the banking world at one point, she started talking to me about the public school system and how it was really, really neat because it allowed her to be with her children and really cool schedule, right? And so I started looking into like what are the opportunities with the public school system? What would be appealing about that to someone? Just being really open minded about it. And I started having some conversations and ran into a lady who had told me that this region of schools was wanting to revive a program that had been it kind of died off. They had something kind of skeletal in place, but really they needed something more robust to support a unique population of students who couldn't be in the mainstream all day long. And so learning more about these students, my heart just started to go out to them, Fred, because I was like, I'm hearing their stories, I'm hearing their issues and what kind of qualifies somebody to be emotionally disturbed or not able to function in a day-to-day classroom. And while there are some just strictly medical diagnoses for these things, even medical diagnoses, as we know, there are emotional and mental health components to that. There are insecurities that come with that. There are things that anybody who recognize, me as an entrepreneur looking around going, okay, I guess I'm in the group, but I kind of don't think like the group. And I'm kind of being found out that I'm not like the group. I mean, that can have an impact on you. So when you've got someone with a diagnosis of either, autism or a learning disability or an emotional disturbance of sorts, and maybe they've got some abuse at home or some other trauma that they've been through, my heart really went out to them and I just became totally interested in, okay, what would that look like to build out this project and or build out this solution so that students who are volunteering to show up day after day to this environment that they aren't comfortable in and they aren't, you know, as successful in as some of their peers, they can have somewhere that is safe and designed for them. And that my heart just went out to that project.
Yeah, and the public school system is kind of the way to go for that because they have the funding. And I've talked to parents about this, and they say, yeah, I can't even consider a private school for my kids just because
Mm.
the school system in the town or the city just has the resources to deal with it in a different way. Now, if they deal with it well or not is obviously it's all over the place, as you
Right.
know. But uh, it's a very powerful thing, I think, to be able to create something that can impact people's lives in such a significant way because it's reverberating through the community when you do that because the parents feel like, oh, they actually have help, they have a
Hmm.
resource that understands what their child is going through, instead of having to deal with it 100% on their own. uh, uh, and so I admire that you've done that, and it's impressive that you've done that as well. And so, and then all of a sudden you're now I could see the evolution to mergers and acquisitions because you're buying and presumably selling dental practices at a certain point, or accumulating groups of practices and maybe selling them. And I'm much more familiar with that. The person that you mentioned, I've known Brian for years as well. Um, and so how did this materialize into what you're doing now?
Yeah, so, like you and like many entrepreneurs, we need to find a home too. And so you join groups, you join masterminds, you get training, you get certified in all of these things, and along the way you start building a network of other more like-minded people. And and you start supporting each other in unique, hits a project here, or could I get paid a ton of money just to come sit in on a 2-hour meeting and identify whether or not we've got the right people, in place for whatever's happening next, whether it's a big change that's about to happen, or an exit that's going to happen, or we're building a board of directors for a new nonprofit. And so you start getting involved in these things, and it's really unique. And what I found in at least all of the groups and all of the coaching that I've been exposed to is that there are some really cool groups out there. And then there is something still left to be desired by me and by a lot of other people. And so what do we do when we don't have it available to us as an entrepreneur? We create it, right? And so I have a fantastic partner, and we've created this beautiful group. It is very intentionally curated to support entrepreneurs and exit entrepreneurs in the most important ways. And when we first started talking about it, we just decided that the gate was going to be really, really tight, because the second you let a little bit of dust in, people are no longer as comfortable. They don't want to talk about those deep things as deeply, or they don't want to connect as readily because there's not that 100% level of trust. And so we just decided, you know what? We've got to create this differently. Many, many good groups out there. You can just hop on, pick the package, sign up, put your credit card in, and now you're in the group. This is different. It's not like that. And while collaborations do take place, it's not a networking group. It's so much more than that. And so that's a really long answer to your question, but the answer is it has led me to build something and surround myself with such unique, highest conscious, highest caliber, most beautiful individuals that I could do this all day long, and it's not work at all.
That's a beautiful thing when you reach that, when it's all fun. Maybe hard work, but it's fun work, and you feel like you're getting somewhere, and you're master of your fate. Uh, it's a bold move to do that, to say, I could take all of this on and make a success out of it. But you
Right.
really believe in yourself, and I think you project that confidence based on your experience. But that life skill of reading people, I think, is probably what's taken you as far as anything else. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yes. It cuts down on a lot of it's very time efficient, if we can just
Yes,
put it that way.
yes, I could see that. So where do you are you in a sweet spot right now that you think, I'm going to sustain this as long as I can, or is something else creeping in that Chelsea needs to take on?
No, I have never felt so calm. It's like I'm gonna have to look her up later, and so we can give her credit. But she wrote the book called Calmfidence. But I'm just calm and confident and just completely peaceful about where I'm at. It's beautiful. It's beyond that, Fred. It's magical. Like every single day, something magical happens, and it's just continuously blooming. And so I love where I'm at. I can't tell you exactly what it will be 10 years from now, 30 years from now, but this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm clear on that, and it's wonderful.
When you're coaching an entrepreneur in the exit strategy, are you able to also talk about this, about what is useful to them, what is going to be the exit that actually gives them that feeling that you have doing what you're doing, uh, especially if they're in the business and they're kind of done, like they're trying to
Mhm.
get out, and what happens a lot of times is whoever buys them says, but you have to stay for 3 years because they made themselves too integral. See, I was coached very early on, uh, by somebody who did similar work to what you're doing now. And he said, your job is to be the useless fool in your business, because
Mm.
you want a buyer to come in and look at the business, and you go around and explain how it works, and you say, this person does that and this person does that, and I don't really know how they do that, but they're really good at it,
Mhm.
and this system we put in place, and it's kind of complicated, I don't understand that. And they come away thinking, well, this business will be unaffected by unplugging Fred, because he doesn't seem to know anything. and
Right.
so they don't make you stay. Uh, and
Hmm.
have you? And would you consider that good advice? I thought it was great advice
This
myself.
sounds like it worked out really, really well for you. You
Yeah.
know, what you're describing though is so important because you've got at the beginning of the game, you've got a lot of founders are front loading all of the everything, right? The sweat equity, the financial responsibility, all of the risk. And so there's all of this uh, recipe of problems. And then you go through the whole journey, and then at the end what you're describing are a whole new set of problems. So it's no longer, there's not a cash flow issue, there's not a, can I, take the vacation with my family I want to take, can I, there, those types of things are in place. The the bigger questions become what you asked: how do I want to feel as I exit, and how do I want this to play out before, during, and after the exit? And when you have an identity that's been so ingrained in what you've been doing for so long, it actually does cause you to ask some existential questions like, who am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? And those are the things that I'm supporting people with. When you say, is that a part of it? I would say that is the priority in the work that I do, because there's no amount you exit for a couple $100 million that still doesn't answer those questions. That was never your question to begin with. Right. And
Hmm.
so, and the other thing that I notice come up a lot is the connection. That is why why the group that I've created and with my partner is just so important. That community is so important because um, you've got a lot of people around you that think they know you because of what you've built or what you've done or how what you exited for, um, but you're still getting to know you in some important ways, so they couldn't possibly. And beyond that, what exactly is the motive here? That becomes the question, that, not to be paranoid, but we sometimes have to ask, um, when all of a sudden you're the most popular kid on the playground and there's really no other reason other than you've got this really great thing going, or you just exited for this really impressive number.
And so many entrepreneurs, they have created a business and they define themselves as the creator of that business. There's almost no other definition to them. And sometimes it's even to the detriment of their family. Is that I'm not really a great father
Mm.
or a great husband, but I did this,
Mm.
and they're very attached to it because that's where the dopamine comes from. That's where the
Right.
juice that people look at uh, and see them as, and then they evolve beyond that when it's gone, and there's a vacuum there that they have to deal with. Uh,
Mm.
and I've seen people very uncomfortable with that, because and go on and end up going through a lot of their exit money because they think, oh well, I've got to prove that I have the Midas touch, so I
Mhm.
have to start another business, and they pour all their money into it,
Mhm.
that they got, and their touch is not so Midasy, and uh, because there's several things that make you successful in business. One of them is timing, and if you don't get that right, you can get everything else wrong. If you're too early to the marketplace, it doesn't matter. Google was the first search engine by a lot, and so you have to realize that some of those things that made you incredibly successful were completely out of your control, and you got a little bit you always have to get a little bit lucky, and then when they come out and they try it again, they they're very frustrated, and they're actually very unhappy because, like, where is the magic? Where's everything coming together? It's like it's just coming apart. And of course, they're making the mistake that people make with money, is they throw money at the problems rather than creativity. There's nobody more creative than an entrepreneur. With 3 weeks of payroll left, they get really, really creative. Because they can't throw money at the problem. They got to be brilliant, and they might fail, but that's a learning experience too. So along the way, created a family, I'm sure, on top of this.
I did. Yeah. Yeah, my kids range in age from 5 to 22 right now. By the end of the year, it'll be 6 to 22. So we've got quite the spread. My husband is absolutely fantastic. I have a very dear friend, and he's been a coach for the greater part of his career, and we've become friends over the years. And he just has so much respect for my husband, and because he's like, it is not an easy feat being married to an entrepreneur, and he's right. And along that, I'll say he does some of the back end of some of my companies. While entrepreneurship is one of the best personal development programs there are in existence, and you actually have to just self-select out of anything easy as self-select into this this journey. Entrepreneurship as a couple, I have found to be one of the most uniquely strengthening programs for a marriage, because it will break you
mm,
if you're not prepared for being unprepared, because there's
yeah.
just so many things you can't see coming. So many strength trainers, so many emotional trainers along the way, and he's fantastic. So yeah, we've built a family, and um, I have four of the most awake individuals as children that I've ever met. I prefer to hang out with them over most other people, and it's a
That's
beautiful
really
life.
nice. That's very gratifying too, and I'm sure that they are learning to be risk takers by having you as their mom, uh, to the point where it maybe even makes you anxious, because they've been indoctrinated into this approach to life. But as they say, behind every successful woman is a man without an ego. Uh,
That's a really good phrase. Yeah,
uh,
he's
and
he
and which is great, because it is harder to succeed in business as a woman still. I mean, it's certainly gotten better, but there's plenty of uh, businessmen who see women as second class citizens still, and you've certainly overcome that. But I'm always impressed when the husband can be the active support team, for the wildcatter that is his wife. um,
Yeah, he's really great. And you mentioned something earlier. You were talking about when you were talking about entrepreneurs, and how do you want to exit, and how do you want to be, and what is that experience going to be like? And a core component of the work that I do with entrepreneurs is getting in touch with yourself into that present moment. What types of mindfulness, activities do you engage in? What does your meditation look like? What are your morning and evening rituals? And these are things that have supported my husband and I through it. We're very engaged in these things too. It's not just things I tell people. These are things that I know to be true and work for me as well. And so when you can get to that place, you're not thinking from your head, and you can actually let answers flow through you and be inspired, then it makes all the difference in what you do after you exit, or how you support your spouse who's a high achiever, or how you support your spouse who's supporting you as the high achiever, because that can't be overlooked as well. It easily could be, right? But
yeah,
it ought not be.
yeah. I mean, it's beautiful to be in a world where the the wife can be, the economic driver in the marriage, uh, and it's always going to be a team effort. But like I said, it requires a lot less ego as the man to do that, and to just be, when somebody, because he's going to get that feedback from other men. It's like, oh yeah, so you're like Mr. Mom, and things like that. And if your ego is fragile, you're going to have trouble dealing with that. So I'd like to meet him someday. I think he's probably the cornerstone of your stable success, because it's easy be to get ahead of your skis a lot of times, with energy and vision like yours. Um, so I would normally ask, where do you think you're going to end up in 10 years? But I think you love what you're doing too much to imagine doing anything but doing this better and better for more people. Um,
I just love, yes, I just love supporting people, and I love what I'm building. I love what I'm doing. And on the personal side, in 10 years, I should be preparing to be a grandma, if not already one. So all of these things are just really exciting.
well, Chelsea, this has been an amazing conversation, and I kind of knew it would be when we first chatted. So I'm really happy to have this time with you and hear your story. I think it should be very inspiring, particularly to women, but I think to anyone who realizes that you can create your own future by just paying attention and saying what excites me, what is my personal skill, because your people skills as well as your organizational skills helped you. And I'm sure you didn't learn the people skills in the finance department of college. Uh,
No, they don't teach that there.
but
The calculator doesn't teach that.
yeah, but for all my listeners out there, as you are striving to live a bolder life, I hope you are as inspired by Chelsea as I am. She's got me. I got to step up my game now again uh, because of this. So thank you so much, Chelsea. I hope to run into you in person out there at a Dicom event or somewhere, you know. Uh,
Well, thank you, Fred. You're equally inspiring. I'm just so glad that we met, and I love what you're doing, and I love everything that you stand for, and I am just so glad to be here. Thank you.
sure. And if you want to learn more about Chelsea, the easiest place to go is on LinkedIn. She's Chelsea Myers on LinkedIn. Myers is how she spells her last name. So connect with her and keep on becoming bolder.